Thanks, Michael, and I will get my own back. You'll see at the end of the presentation, and I'm not joking. Good morning. Shall we take a look at 2025? Shall we have a look at the future? I think we should, but before we do, I think we should have a look at the past. Because everybody thinks that the future, when you talk about 2025, is far away. It's a notion of time, but it's not. It's going to disappear like that. And to prove that to you, we'll have a look back at 10 years ago, 2005, to remember some of the events and things that happened in that year, to see, does it feel like 10 years ago? For example, in 2005, Hurricane Katrina decimated New Orleans, and that was an enormously powerful story at the time. More interesting, of course, was the fact that Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt split, and he jumped ship for Angelina Jolie, the cad. And then, of course, we had this lunatic, Tom Cruise, who was waxing lyrical about how much he was in love and terrified poor Oprah Winfrey by jumping up and down on the couch. Those things don't seem like 10 years ago, really, do they? But 10 years ago they were. So it's not a long period of time. However, 10 years is an ocean of time in relation to the developments in our industry, in technology and in media. For example, 10 years ago, this year, YouTube was launched, and look at it now. Also, 10 years ago, this man, Steve Jobs, God bless him, launched the iPod Nano, a product that is virtually obsolete now already 10 years later because of another product that he launched 2 years later in 2007, which was the iPhone. So an awful lot can happen in 10 years, and we better get our ass in gear and start planning the next 10 years, because if we wait for it, as often we do, the future will pass us by. So we're living in very, very exciting times, and the next 10 years is going to be quite a ride. Everything will become personalized, everything will become more intelligent, everything will become more predictive, and everything will become much more intense. And it's important that we remember that and we look forward to it, because it is going to be an exciting time. And underpinning all of that is speed. The speed of the computer is going to transform this industry. We're going to have outstanding speeds, both in terms of computer processing power and also connectivity. And if you think about Moore's law, which has been around since 1965, it's proved very accurate. Gordon Moore invented this theory in 1965. He said that every year after 1965, computer speeds would double. That remained true up until the early 1970s. He revised the law in 1975 and said that every 2 years, computer speeds would double. And that proved to be the case for 30 years until 2010. And it's drifted a little bit, but many people think it will settle back around that level. And if that's the case, you will find that computer speeds in 2025 will be 1,000 times faster than they are today. And just think about the capabilities that that will bring and the opportunities that that will bring our industry. And also that speed will underpin, along with technological developments, the Internet of Things, which is becoming very interesting now. And in the future, we're going to have smart sensors and massive data centers, which together with other innovations will make the Internet thoroughly seamless in our lives. It'll be like breathing in and out. Also, computers will disappear somewhat, and ordinary objects will become magic, a bit like Steve Jobs envisaged, where the computing power and the computing nature of products aren't obvious to the eye, they're invisible, but the actual products and the ordinary objects in our lives become magic. And some of that magic you might find in the bathroom. You know, how mundane is the bathroom? But it could be transformed into something that takes discrete biological readings of how your health is, and also to screen you for illness as you're using the bathroom, automatically measure your weight. It'd be like going to the doctor every single day. So the Internet of Things will make our lives much more dynamic, and everything in our lives can be automated in terms of the normal day-to-day things. So therefore, as a result of that, our chores will no longer be chores, and it will give us more time, perhaps, to sleep with robots. Because artificial intelligence is bringing humans and machines much closer together. In fact, it's a bit of a concern. If you take like Elon Musk or Stephen Hawking, they're both quite worried about this. In fact, Elon Musk has said that he fears artificial intelligence more than thermonuclear war. And there's no doubt that it will bring challenges and concerns that we have to be careful about as a society. We all remember the movie The Terminator. But it is important to bear in mind that there are huge advantages that come from artificial intelligence. And if you take that, maybe not by 2025, but certainly thereafter, artificial intelligence will help us make very complex decisions easily. It will perhaps give us legal advice. It will teach us everything we want to know. It will drive our cars. It will build products specifically for us based on our own needs. So it is a very exciting future out there. And yes, indeed, by the way, looking back at that photograph, it is the case that sexual partners that are robots will happen. And in fact, that technology is being worked on as we speak. And I think that is just an extraordinary development that I'll leave you to think about in the minutes ahead. So also, if you ally with that what's going on in virtual reality, or mixed reality, as Microsoft calls it, where they mix the hologram with the physical world. So this product here, which this image is showing you, is looking at HoloLens, which is a product that will be launched probably in a couple of years by Microsoft, which will allow you not just look at what's going on the screen, but take what's going on the screen and look at it as a holograph and turn around it and change things in it. It'll absolutely change the way that we create, the way that we communicate, the way that we work, and the way that we play. The connected car is already, believe it or not, the fastest growing internet-connected device in the world as we speak. But by 2025, 100% of all cars that come off the production line will be connected. Digital outdoor, which is already being embraced more or less in sort of indoor environments by the industry at the moment, will become more commonplace when the planning authorities, who are the impediments to growing it at the moment, will realise that this is a very good thing for our cities. It's very consistent with what the Dublin City Council has in terms of a plan for Dublin being a smart city. It also performs a very good public service, where this network of digital posters will provide opportunities right across the network for people to be told about missing persons and indeed weather warnings and things of that nature. So it is an ideal public-private partnership. Screens will absolutely be everywhere. It stands to reasons, and they'll be two a penny. And also they'll be foldable, so it'll give Fionn perhaps a lot to think about in terms of how they might, in the news media industry, distribute their product in years to come. And programmatic buying, which has reached a tipping point in terms of online, will grow into other areas of media, but only if there's enough data to power it, because programmatic buying is only viable as a way of buying media if there is data to power and segment the audience in order to ensure that you're reaching people optimally and with the highest levels of efficiency. Also, addressable advertising, which has been around for a long time in the online world, is creeping already into television with Sky's launch of AdSmart in the UK in recent years. It's already available in Northern Ireland. It will be available in the Republic of Ireland at some stage in the near future. And basically this means that if you're watching television, you're served an ad according to your profile as a viewer. So imagine a situation where there are two houses side by side, they're both watching the same channel, they're both watching the same commercial break, but they're served entirely different ads based on the profile of the audience watching. There are some data issues, protection issues regarding that, but it is happening and will become more and more part of life. In fact, in the future, it won't just be spot advertising that will be served, but product placement within programs will be served electronically, specifically to the profile of the viewer. But, we tend to overestimate the impact of these things in the short term and underestimate their impact in the long term. Things will move much more gradually than perhaps sometimes you hear at conferences like this. And another thing to bear in mind is that, as we're moving through this virtual world, that we're tactile beings. We like things we can touch. And I think as we advance more and more into the digital age, where things become more and more virtual, we'll remember that and we'll value that and we'll crave that to some degree. So I do not see a situation where newspapers are going to disappear. In fact, we did some research recently as an agency. We asked people, do you think newspapers will be around in 2045? That's the print product. And 63% of the population we asked said yes, they would be around. And I think they'll be around for a lot longer than that, because people like things that they can touch. And it's one of the reasons why vinyl has made a big comeback. Vinyl record sales are up 56% in the UK this year. They're up 38% in the US. If you take the total amount of physical music bought in the US this year, vinyl accounts for 9% of it. 13 million albums will be sold in the US this year. 5 years ago, in 2010, that was less than 3 million. So this is not something that is frivolous. This is a real viable return to things that we value, that we can touch and feel and sense ownership of. So I'm not saying it's going to halt the march or anything like it of the digital age, but it will create viable business opportunities for people in those more traditional spaces. Also, if you look at the forecast that we have for media consumption, what you're looking at here on the left-hand side is 2015, and this is the total number of minutes per day spent exposed to media channels of different kinds for the average adult in Ireland. So you can see the top, the dark green bar is linear television, followed then underneath by radio, blue is outdoor, red is the print media, and then online other in green and online video in yellow. Now, if you fast forward 10 years, what we are predicting is that overall media minutes will increase by 17%. And the big change is in relation to online, where in 2015, it's about 150 minutes on average people spend online. We predict that by 2025, that will be 500 minutes online. And over 80% of that, probably closer to 85% of that, will be video. And you can see that linear television's share has come down a piece because some of that will go into online video. And some of that online video will be provided by existing broadcasters. So that's the big change that we see coming. And what that means is it's just going to become incredibly complex. And I don't believe that the model, the marketing services model that we have at the moment is fit for that purpose for the future. It's not properly structured to cater for a future that is so complex and so ever-changing, and it must change. But our industry isn't good at changing, and in fact we're very slow. We're one of the most conservative industries I've ever come across. Despite the perception that we're a creative, dynamic industry, we're both of those things, but we certainly don't change very quickly. We always are behind what's going on in the consumer's world, and from a technology point of view, certainly. All you have to do is look and see at how slow agencies were to embrace digital and how slow they are to embrace data at the moment. I mean, if you look across all forms of industry, data is embraced by other industries far faster than it is by our industry. And that's something that I think that we need to take account of and change, because we're working in silos at the moment, and you know that's providing good work, and it's kind of working, but I think it's not going to work in the future. It's starting to creak, I believe, as a model. And I think the future, the model that will be required is one where we're working less in silos and working more in an integrated fashion. The talk is today about integrated marketing communications, but I think that this industry has never been more disintegrated rather than integrated. And what's going to happen is that also as our skill sets start to overlap, that's going to even complicate things more further. And we're going to have increasing situations where people say, that's my patch, that's my field, get off my territory. I'm sure some people in the room have already experienced that, and I'm sure clients have experienced that, seeing agencies fight amongst themselves, sometimes behind the scenes, about what patch they are on. So we need to change because that's not going to work in the future. And what was so wrong with full service? It was a good model. It was good for its time. But the problem with it was that it was over. The emphasis was far too much in the creative, and everything else played second fiddle. But there is, I believe, a place for a new type of full service model in the future, one that is very different to the full service of the past, one that is powered and fueled entirely by data, where people of all skill sets are working together as teams to solve problems for a client. I think you'll see a completely different type of client service or client director type individual, which will be more of a business consultant, somebody who actually sits down and understands their client's business properly, their business problems, and together with the rest of the team shape solutions that are holistic, that address those particular objectives for the client, not just marketing communications. And I can't see a future in 10 years' time where 8 agencies are working with one client. I don't know how the client is going to understand if they're getting the right advice. Is it a question of who's shouting the loudest? Or is there somebody who's taking overall ownership of the strategic direction for those brands? These are big questions, and I think the industry will need to restructure in order to face them correctly. I think in terms of the type of skill set that you're going to see in agencies of the future, there's going to be more product concept developers. People who've never walked in the door of an agency will begin to start working in agencies. I think that you'll need to see the combined expertise of technology people and brand problem solvers working together. And that's going to be really fascinating as we start to build out our plans for the next 5 to 10 years. And I was particularly struck by this case study, which I think describes some of what I'm trying to talk about here, which is Optus. And this is a piece of work done by M&C Saatchi in Australia. And Optus is the #2 mobile network in Australia, and very much seen as #2, a distant #2 perceptually. The #1 driver of consideration in the Australian market is network size. And even though Optus has a very similar network size to the market leader, it wasn't seen as such by the consumer. And they were flogging a dead horse in actually constantly going after that point. So instead of that, they said, well, rather than talking about our network, why don't we talk about what we can do with our network and use that as the platform which to communicate. So M&C Saatchi, together with the client, looked at where that might be able to go, and they discovered that if we can solve a problem in society, a major problem, with our technology, that will give us a whole new place to play. So they developed a buoy called Boy Live, I think it is, or Clever Boy. And what they realized was that, you know, in Australia, shark attacks, you're 4 times more likely to be attacked by a shark in Australia than anywhere else in the world. And it was a problem. There was no way of actually using technology, or nobody had thought about using technology to actually solve this problem. So they developed this Clever Buoy, floated in the sea, and there's a sonar boom below it which detects shark movements, and that sends a signal then to the Optus network that then alerts the lifeguards, who then raise the alarm. A fantastic piece of work which was developed by this team holistically, and it transformed the brand overnight. They were all of a sudden seen as very much a leader in the industry, somebody who had helped change societal issues and helped save lives, and it entirely changed the conversation with that brand and how it was perceived in the market. And that's the kind of thing that I think we'll be doing ever more of in the future. In the future, media planning will be so precise and entirely data-fueled. It's all going to be about data. Data is going to be like the blood in our veins. It will require huge investment. In core media, we're already investing hundreds of thousands of euro in this in order to ensure that we have the right skill set and the right technology in place to provide answers for our clients. You know, data will allow us, instead of using experience and desk research to recommend the best media plan, it allows us to be very sure about what we're recommending and be able to predict the outcomes of what we're recommending. So that will be absolutely enormously important. And data scientists are going to be basically the difference between winning and losing, living and dying, as Al Pacino said. It's the inches that will actually give us an advantage for brands. We employed our first data scientist last year, and we're in the market at the moment for our second data scientist. And these are the people who will make so much difference. It's not just enough to have the technology, you need to have the skills within the business that knows how to manage that technology. It will no longer be acceptable not to know. We will have to be able to say with certainty the impact of our marketing communications and other courses of action for clients. So the big challenge in the future is going to be the talent issue. If you think there's a war for talent in our industry at the moment, I'm telling you, just wait for the war for talent in the future, particularly around data scientists. These people are under huge demand as it currently stands. Biotech companies, government agencies, energy companies, finance companies, gaming companies, law enforcement, are all looking for data scientists. And there is going to be a huge competition to get the best people. Also, technologists are going to be in huge demand. So we all need to get our act together and make sure that we have a really good strategy to promote our industry and our own brands to attract the right talent. And speaking of talent, look at these beautiful people here. So, the most beautiful car mechanic you've ever seen in your life. The most beautiful, Alicia Florrick, look at her, fantastic. The good wife, you know, the most wonderful lawyer in the world. And then Michael Clancy, I told you I was going to get my own back. The most handsome, debonair, dynamic ad man, media man, marketing communications man you can imagine. But what are those industries actually earning in terms of hourly rates? Now that's the key thing.
I think we're coming to the end of the talk.
So I'm using these people to kind of indicate these individual sectors of industry. But if you wanted to get a solicitor in Dublin, the blended, and these are blended rates, right? It costs $2.95 per hour. And I got that information yesterday compared with a couple of different firms. You know, a partner charges maybe €375 an hour. You might get a kind of entry-level solicitor at €150 an hour. You might get an associate at €220 an hour. But the blended rate is €295 an hour. A car mechanic. I phoned the Audi Centre in Sandyford the other day and just asked, I said, what is your hourly rate before VAT? 13.5% VAT, by the way, on that. It's €140 per hour, okay? And this is the hourly rate, not for Michael, because we can't, I tell you, you couldn't afford Michael. We have to pay, it's thousands per hour in order to cover his outrageous salary. But this €71 per hour is based on the IAPI survey that was released of agencies volunteering what they put in a pitch on a blended hourly rate in media. And I think that's a thundering disgrace. And we've nobody to blame except ourselves in terms of how we've gotten to this point, because that is absolutely unsustainable in the future. If we feel, and I know in certain circumstances where I've seen agencies, you know, propose rates which are lower than €20 per hour to clients in order to win a piece of business. I mean, that only goes one way. The future, we will never be able to provide the services in the future that we will need to provide if we are charging that kind of level. And I think anybody with a right mind could say that what we provide clients in terms of return on investment, in terms of marketing impact, profitability, and also what we provide the economy. You know, for every €1 that's spent in advertising drives €5.7 in economic activity. And if we feel that our hourly rates should be half that of a car mechanic, I think that's a very sorry place to be indeed. So just to finish, I want to give 3 pieces, I suppose, of advice to all my colleagues in the industry. One is don't wait for the future. Start planning for it now, because it's going to be upon us before we know it. The second is you should prove to your clients, show them the evidence, prove your worth so that you can charge an appropriate level for your services. And enjoy it and promote our industry. It's a wonderful industry. It's a very exciting industry to work in and will be ever so more so in the future. Thank you very much.